Hey guys, Hawk here. Feeling a little out of it, it's a little late. I just saw a video doing the death scroll as you do, and I got a haircut by the way. Today's Saturday, it was a Nerf 4 today, and I got up super early and I got a haircut, and then I went to the Nerf 4. We were there all day, probably like 5:30. We were there till. It's late now. Um, Day's kind of turned worse for wears, but I'm not going to let it get me down. Doing the death scroll, as you do, and I saw someone making a 3D printed Master Chief helmet. It looked like Halo 3 or 4 or 5. It was in that era. And I had a thought. Why don't I like that? I like making things, but for some reason that doesn't communicate well with me. I don't like that kind of creativity. And then I wondered, why don't I like that creativity? Why that feels wrong to me. That feels like I shouldn't be like that. It feels so disconnected. 3D printing feels so disconnected to me. I'm disconnected from my work. And when I have something like Pocket Javelin, which is in the other room, so I'm not going to go bother getting it, that blaster doesn't really speak to me the same way some of my other blasters have, which I just happen to hear. Like I said, I just came from a Nerf war, so I have all my stuff here. I kind of went light today. It was just this box and this. But like this one, I've said before, this one spoke to me. I like carving. I've found out that I like carving. So this one has a lot of carving details and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed making this blaster. I feel like I'm more connected when I have a Dremel in my hand, when I have a hand file in my hand, when I'm working out the little tiny details and I'm doing tiny little things, like I'm really close and I'm working up on all the details and stuff like that. But for some reason, when I was working on Pocket Javelin, I had the same level of detail, the same level of care, the same level of commitment to the design, the same forethought, the same I don't know, it just felt different. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone, but it just kind of felt different to make. It felt good. It was fine. I liked doing it. I enjoyed doing it. I think it was a challenge. I think I did what I accomplished, which is I just kind of wanted to make that to prove a point. I could. That's literally the only reason why I made that. I don't know though. Can't really explain it. And then there are some blasters that I did make where technically they might have been the best thing that I made at the time. I think Glass Construct is a good example of that. I made it. It was technically the best blaster I had ever made, and still probably, honestly, still is. Everything was pretty much perfect about that blaster. The paint was dead on. I got a compliment from my idol in the hobby of painting blasters, FDS himself, Tom from that, complimented me on my paint job and said that it was immaculate and that he couldn't have done a better job himself. And that's pretty much the best compliment I possibly could have gotten from that blaster. The internals were immaculate. They were the best that you could get. The cast resin parts literally didn't exist. They were like $1,000 parts, pretty much, because they didn't exist before. And I only made like 3 or 4 sets of those Rapid Strike parts. So it's pretty unique. Definitely the only crystal clear set in existence. The LEDs were, at the time, $1 a piece. They were very new, very rare cyan LEDs from Philips, the company Philips. They had just developed cyan and purple LEDs. True purple LEDs, not UV LEDs. Because when you look up purple LED, you get UV LEDs. But those were actually purple. They were kind of dim, but they were actually purple. Oh God, but I don't know. I finished the blaster. I looked at it. And it was so lifeless. Can you see the disappointment on my face? I could almost cry talking about it, just from disappointment. I finished it. It was the most logged project I had ever done. I live streamed 117 hours of the 145 hours it took to make that blaster. I looked at it. I shot it a few times. I actually took it to a Nerf war once. Used it in a round. And when I used it, I was reserving judgment. And I used it in a round. And I looked at it and said, yeah, this thing's a piece of crap. Hate it. I actively don't like it. And the weird part was I had no problem saying that. I had no problem admitting that. There was no emotions connected to that blaster at all. I sold that blaster for $2,700 in 23 hours. I posted that blaster because I needed to pay a bill. And I sold it in 23 hours for $2,700. That's never been done in the hobby. By a long shot. By, no pun intended. By quite a large margin. And maybe it was a fluke. Maybe it was a fluke. But we'll never know. Because I'm not going to do it again. I'm probably not going to do that again. Regardless, I do think I'm blessed. I do think I'm fortunate. But it just makes me wonder what the difference is. Some blasters spoke more to me than others. Ethereal Fortress spoke to me the most. When I was making that blaster, the moment I conceived that blaster in my brain, because the original story is, I've told this story a few times, but I've never documented it, so I guess now is a good time. I was going to make a Straven for myself. I was contemplating my own blaster, and I had made Hollow Spectrum, which was the first cast resin parts that I made ever. That's what put me on the map. I got on MTB's Make Test Battles. I got on Make Test Battles podcast, and I got 1,500 subscribers from that. That was my first 1,500 subscribers. And that was kind of a test for the clear parts, the cast resin parts, and the Straven as a whole. And it was alright. The Straven's cool. I like the Straven. But I want to put the battery in the back in the stock to balance out the feel, among other things, among other reasons. And so I was going to make a Straven and just kind of put a hollow mag there, and the mag well in the back of the Straven was going to be like a jam door or a battery door of sorts, and I was just going to stuff the battery in there. But it kind of seemed half-hearted. I wasn't really feeling it, to be honest. And I was about to pull the trigger because I needed a primary for NVZ, not NWAR. The first one was called NVZ, and that was only in a couple months. I think it was the beginning of the year. And then they leaked pictures of the Hyperfire, and I instantly went, that's the blaster. There it is, right there. The first time I saw that image, I immediately realized that was the blaster. I immediately took it into MS Paint, and then I scaled the magazine. A lot of people have trouble scaling those images properly, but a good way to do it is to take something that is a known size, not the trigger, not the grip, not anything else, but the magazine is universal, right? We have magazines. So I took the magazine width and then I scaled that to the strife. I lined it up, and sure enough, it lined up perfectly. So I had a plan, and now I needed to get one. Fortunately, at the time, I had a lot of contacts, and I put out an APB, and I said, I'm willing to pay anything. I said, I'm just being transparent. I'm being 100% honest. I'm going to pay anything anyone wants for a Hyperfire. I said that. And luckily, a friend contacted me and said, if you pay me for the blaster and you pay for expedited shipping, I will give it to you. And I paid for overnight shipping. It was like $100 total for that blaster. It's $50 blaster, and I paid $50 for overnight shipping. And lucky for him, it didn't make it. And since it didn't make the overnight shipment, he actually got, or at least he should have gotten, his $50 back. Unfortunately, he never transferred it to me, but since I had the blaster, I was happy to let him have that $50. I got it the next day, so it was 2 days. As soon as I got that blaster, I made that video where I'm literally just ripping into the Hyperfire. And I really did get it that fast. I opened the blaster, I loaded some batteries because I was curious, shot it, it was like, yeah, it's a lemon. The first releases were lemons. And then I immediately cut it in half. As soon as I was done with that video, I think I made the next video, which was me literally cutting the Hyperfire in my bandsaw. And I started on Ethereal Fortress, and it only took me a few months to make that because I actually had a time limit. I only have like 70 hours in Ethereal Fortress, I think. But boy, something about that blaster, from the concept, from that initial image of the Hyperfire, it spoke to me. It told me what it wanted to be. I wanted something out of that blaster, but it said, no, I want to be something. And I don't know if that makes any sense, and I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but I don't know how to say it any other way. This blaster is a good example. I used this blaster extensively before I actually turned it into this. This was my primary pistol for pistol rounds, and it was just a regular sledge fire. I think I like this angle better. It was just a regular sledge fire at the time, not because you're lower. I'm literally just resting my arm because I'm a lazy piece of garbage on the bag. I'll prop up the bag a little bit. How's that? So it started out as a normal sledge fire, just modded, singled. And boy, this thing ripped ass. We would play pistol rounds, and it's a pistol, but it's one hell of a pistol, right? And this thing, it's not as mean. It didn't look as mean as this thing. I just had a normal sledge fire. But there was something about holding this thing out and pointing it at someone and pulling that trigger, and for some reason it just connected. Such good memories tied to that. And so I added the grip, and then I eventually did the body work. But the entire time, that thing wanted to be something. It was begging to be something. This one, I think this one screamed at me the loudest. Maybe it didn't hit me emotionally the tightest, but boy, it had a personality. And I feel like I brought it out. This is what I felt like when I held this blaster and I pointed it at people. And what's really nice about this blaster, you might not think that it's nice. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. Sorry, you're kind of facing up. I don't mean to be that angle. But when you prime this blaster, you notice that I have my thumb up here. And the reason for that is if I come over here, this is where your thumb normally goes when you prime this thing, and every single person, whether you're aware of it or not, primes a sledge fire like this. And if you prime it like that, this thing is going to bite you. And it doesn't look like it hurts that much. It's not that sharp. But boy, when you're ratcheting that thing back, that will bite the ever-loving crap out of your hand. And trust me, you only do it once. You only really do that once. And you go, ah! And it left a mark. It almost drew blood. And I went, ah, and I had that recoil, and something about it was like, boy, this thing has personality. The first thing that bit me, it was like, yeah, this thing's alive. This thing has personality. This thing, you could literally offer me $5,000 for that and I wouldn't take it. It's a part of me. Am I nuts? Does anyone else feel this way about anything? This doesn't have a price tag. I can't make this again. There's something about when someone picks it up and says, "Is that bone?" That's literally the best feeling on the planet. Someone just did it today at the Nerf War. They're like, "It looks like bone." It's like, oh. You know how hard that is to make something that isn't shaped like bone look like bone? Especially for me, who I'm used to clean lines, and you had to make this thing imperfect. Every tiny little crack and crevice and detail. I'm already getting that strong sensation from Somber Song, which is, that was not supposed to be the original name. I think it's actually inside. I do want to get that blaster. Let's go back out. Lighting's a little better in there. Ironically, the garage has the best lighting in the entire house. Switch you around. That's not the jam door that's going to be that color. It's going to be this color. That's just what I casted. I was testing it. I know this is very similar to Ethereal Fortress, but boy, this thing, I don't know. And I'm not really going to know until it's finished because it keeps changing. And that's kind of the beauty of it. I'm just kind of doing what I feel like it wants me to do. And I'm just trying to do it the best of my ability. That's literally my only goal for this, is I just want to make a better blaster than what I did before. Every line, every curve, I want to make sure that that's the best that I can do right now. Whoa. So, I don't know. Do you guys feel this way about anything? Have you ever had an emotional connection to an inanimate object? Has it been different if you've made it? Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.